Hi there, data scamps and data jamps. This is Richie. Welcome to the session. I've got to confess, before this, I just tried some caffeinated chewing gum while I was also drinking a coffee, so I'm a little bit hyper at the moment. I have switched to chamomile tea to try and calm things down. But if I have a heart attack, it's probably because the webinar is too exciting. With that, let's get started. So, if you work with data, SQL is completely inescapable. It's just used by every business, and it had its 50th anniversary earlier this year. So we did an interview with Don Chamberlain, the inventor of SQL, on the Data Frame podcast. But the language is still evolving, and one of my favorite evolutions of SQL is the DuckDB database. So DuckDB has its own dialect of SQL, which takes inspiration from R and from Python, so it's a lot easier for many analytics tasks. And then on top of DuckDB, there's a commercial implementation called MotherDuck, which also makes things easier if you're working with a database in business. Now, DuckDB is also very highly integrated into DataCamp's Data Lab platform that we're going to be using today. So if you write SQL against a CSV file, then DuckDB is the database you're using. So if you take any DataCamp projects, or if you take the DataCamp Data Scientist or Data Engineer certification, then DuckDB SQL is the type of SQL that you'll be using. So very important for all of you to learn, which means I'm especially excited about today. Now, our guest is Mehdi Ouaza. He's a data engineer and also a developer advocate at MotherDuck. And so as a data engineer, he's got a lot of experience in data pipelines, modeling, and reporting. But also as a developer advocate, he's a very prolific teacher of particularly of using DuckDB SQL. So you can find him on YouTube, LinkedIn, and many live meetups around the world. So with that, please take it away, Mehdi.
Hey, welcome everybody. Good morning, good evening, whatever it is for you. Please let me know in the chat where you're joining from. I'm based in Berlin, but I'm currently traveling. So I'm in Southeast Africa actually, so it's pretty far. Bear with me with my internet connection. So yeah, I think it's gonna be great. I need to put the slides on the screen. So if we can go there. That's perfect. All right, so we have a lot to cover. I do workshop of 3 hours sometimes, and people say it wasn't enough, right? And we have really like 40 minutes now. So let's buckle up. So quickly about me, Rich already did an intro. I'm Belgian, but I live in Germany. I have more than 9 years experience in data engineering. I do data tech content on YouTube, on my personal YouTube channel, and the MotherDuck one, because I'm also working, of course, as a data engineer and developer advocate at MotherDuck, which is DuckDB in the cloud in a short version, but we'll get into that. And I'm going to expand it further. And so this is a real picture of me building data pipeline. Yes, it's all about building blocks. So the requirement for today, you need a laptop, a Duck that might be helpful, and an internet connection, an internet browser, a terminal. We're going to use the CLI. I'm going to show you the DuckDB CLI. It's optional. You have multiple ways to interact with DuckDB. You'll see that also. And as we've been said in the introduction, DataCamp account, so you can open the shared notebook and set up a MotherDuck account for free and create the notebook connection. I'll get with you on that. Don't worry. So this is how you need to connect to MotherDuck from DataCamp. I'm not going to go in details, but if you want to go back and you're going to do that, it's really fairly easy. But I'll put the step for you. So the webinar goal today is just to learn one way to use DuckDB in the project. And please let me know in the chat if you already use DuckDB or if you're curious to hear about DuckDB. I'm really curious to know about that. I'll see in the chat and watch your comments. But yeah, the bottom line is that there is a lot of things you can do with DuckDB, and we'll cover different use case, and we go really pragmatic. So we're gonna write some queries in pure SQL using Python, using DataCamp notebook. so that you get a bit of a vision on what's possible. And rather than saying, here are the use case of DuckDB and let you go on your own, we're going to dive straight into the pragmatic stuff. So what is the product doing? And then I'm going to zoom out and show you some schema to understand the use case. That's usually the best, because like if you show, for example, that a plane to someone and saying, yeah, people used for that to travel, and you've never seen a plane of your life, it's difficult to grasp the component, right? It's big, there is wings and so on. So we're going to take a flight with DuckDB. So here is the agenda quickly. I'm gonna talk a bit about some theory, why DuckDB, where is it coming from. Then we're gonna straight go to some SQL, and then we're gonna talk about DuckDB storage extension, go back to coding, talking about the DuckDB ecosystem and use case. So it's the zoom out part that I was talking in the intro, and then going back to coding. It's not a straight agenda. I may go jump off back to coding or back to site, depending on your question. We have a Q&A for a deeper question, I would say. But if there is something you don't understand of what I'm doing right now, please don't hesitate to comment, and I'll make my best to watch out the comment while live coding. Can you imagine this? It's live coding, so for sure it's going to fail. You're going to see there is no video recording. It's just me directly writing SQL. So what makes a great database? Let me know in the chat, what do you think it makes a great database? And do you think it's correctness, performance, ease of use, or a cute mascot? And often the answer is the ease of use. And what about performance then? Because everybody, show their benchmark and how fast their database. And don't worry, we'll show you that too. That DuckDB is damn fast. But if we actually step out for a bit, which one of these should be optimized? The time between when I click run and the time the query completes, or the time between when I have a question and the time I have an answer? And these are not the same, okay? So the point is, there is really an important thing about ease of use. Another graph I like to show, which is if you look at the performance on the different data warehouse, so OLAP database, Synapse, Redshift, Snowflake, BigQuery, it's already a bit old. But the point is, if you look at the performance conclusion, you could say, okay, that's the one that is faster, so lower is better on this graph, right? Synapse, then Redshift, then Snowflake, then BigQuery. And if you've been working in data, probably you know that that is not really true, because the market conclusion is Snowflake mostly, BigQuery, Redshift, and Synapse. Synapse doesn't exist. I've been rebranded now with Fabric and so on. But at least for the time, I would say between 2019 to 2023. So that's the point, that it's all about ease of use. So come DuckDB. So this is Hannes, one of the co-creator of DuckDB. So that's a real duck. It's not a AI image in Amsterdam. And so the story behind this is that he noticed that data scientists don't like databases. They work with CSV all around the place, but however, they do use pandas, they do use R and dplyr and data frame, and copying those all about doing multiple steps make the copy every time really slow, and it's hard to manage. You end up with a project with a bunch of CSV or Parquet here and there, and it's not only the transformation is challenging, but the management of the data set is challenging. So enter DuckDB. So it was created by Hannes, as I was just showing the picture, and Mark at CWI, which is a research institute in Amsterdam. And so it is maintained by DuckDB Labs and the DuckDB Foundation. So DuckDB is a lightweight in-process SQL analytics engine. And the thing is, it's run in process. It means that it's not like a client server. I have a graph just after. If you use Python within DuckDB, you can just do a pip install DuckDB, and that's it. There is nothing to install on the server side. It's a MIT license, and we passed the 6.5 million downloads per month on just the Python client. So that's pretty huge. There is a huge adoption right now. I see a couple of in comment that I was amazed on how mostly it handles Parquet for amazing. Parquet, amazing, just mind blowing. I use DuckDB, I use and I love it. So I feel like there is already a couple of DuckDB fans in the chat. So it's a new kind of a database category. We have basically in-process transactional database. So SQLite is also just a library. If you're using Python, you just install pip install SQLite, and it's in process in your Python run process. But there is no in-process analytical database. So I put a client server side data warehouse here, Snowflake, but BigQuery, Redshift is the same. So this is really a new kind of database. That's the main key takeaway here. And because of that, it's really opening up the use case and the possibility that you can do. And you're going to see that after, but think about that's the foundation on what is DuckDB. It's an in-process analytical database. It's a new kind of database if you compare it to the others. So it can run really anywhere. So there is DuckDB CLI that you can use on macOS, Windows, Linux. You can just do a pip install DuckDB if you're using Python, if R is your thing, if Java is your thing, Node.js. I'm curious for people. I've seen like there is already DuckDB fan in the chat. Let me know which kind actually of client are you using. If it's Python, if it's the CLI, or if R, I would be curious to know. So it supports input and output multiple formats. So you can read from CSV, JSON, Parquet, Iceberg, Delta Lake, also right now, so that's table format. And it has really a good interaction with Pandas and Polar, so you can query directly Pandas data frame with zero copy, thanks to Arrow. So there is no overhead if you switch between a Pandas frame to DuckDB for transformation. And we've seen that a lot. People, refactoring their Python pipeline using Pandas to use DuckDB for their transformation and keep the input and output, or if they need to display something with Pandas. Another important thing is that DuckDB has its own file format. So it's kind of like a database file that includes all the tables and all the metadata. It's super efficient. And it's a great file format to work with, to, again, have a single place to manage all your data. That's great. You can create views to S3 file. You can import CSV. We'll play a bit also with that. So I see in the chat that a lot of people are using Python, Jupyter Notebook, Magic DuckDB extensions, a lot of Python. So yeah, that's what we saw in the stat. Also, a lot of Python downloads. The data source, same thing. You can query directly a Postgres database within DuckDB. You can query directly S3, Google Cloud Storage, Azure file. Again, super fast and super easy. So enough talking. So we've seen that DuckDB is a Swiss Army knife. So I'm going to start by, so I'm just having a VS Code here. And basically, you can install if you're on macOS just to brew. There is also another package manager for Windows people. There is the installation page. Do not worry. Everything you do here, you can do in the data camp notebook. And actually, I'm going to show you quickly how it look like before diving into code. So you have the workbook, which is here. If you set up your MotherDuck account and you set up your connection, you just have to configure your MotherDuck token, and you're ready to go to start querying. So MotherDuck is the server cloud offering of DuckDB. We'll go into that, but you can also run all the SQL I'm going to run over there, or you can run within Python. So you can just run the 2for cell, and you have a DuckDB connection ready, and then you can start start querying. So that's also a good place to start with just the notebook there. And so coming back to the VS Code here. So I just did a pre-install DuckDB. So that's simply it. And now I have CLI, which is ready there. So we're going to start really easy, and just to get understanding how the in-memory DuckDB is kind of working. So the first thing is that if you create basically a table just like this, I'm just sending, by the way, it's just a shortcut. It's a SQL file, and I'm sending it to the terminal, to the DuckDB CLI. So here now, if you see, I have basically a table that I create, which is ducks. And this table has just one line. The first thing interesting to see, Richie was talking about SQL, is that there is a SQL standard, but this one has been evolving pretty slow because it's really hard to get new things into the SQL standard. And DuckDB has been leading the way in where there is a lot of friendly function to help you just be more productive within SQL. So the first thing you can see is that I'm not doing a select star from. I'm just doing a from because DuckDB support from first statement. So that is beautiful. It's happened to me now when I'm going to another database. I just do from and I get an error and say, okay, let's select star limit. Anyway, so that's one first friendly SQL. We're going to see others. So you see, if I do select database, show database, I just have in memory. So that means that now if I exit the process, the CLI process here, and I'm launching DuckDB again, and I'm showing the tables, I have no more tables. My ducks are gone. So what happened? It's in process. Well, that's why. How do I purchase the data? Well, there is multiple ways to purchase the data. You can write to CSV, you can write to Parquet, or you can use also the DuckDB file format. We're going to play a bit with that. So if I do a launch at CLI and do DuckDB and the name of the database, the extension can be .db or .ddb. It's just by convention, can be anything. Now, basically, as you can see, as soon as I'm going to do an operation here, so let's do a create table of my duck again. So you see now on the right side, I have now a wall and a file that's been created, and it's the DuckDB basically file format, and the data is over there. So I'm exiting the process again. Now I'm launching against DuckDB. I do a show tables. My ducks is there. Okay, so I persist the data over this file. So this is pretty neat because you can create multiple view also over S3 and so on using this file format. So that's a bit like hello world. Now let's go into because time is running. Let's go into this one, which I really like. So I'm gonna do a from, and basically just this is just a Parquet file over S3. Just a Parquet file over S3. I would challenge you to use to show me any tool where in a single line of code, you can query a remote file on object storage, here S3, and in Parquet, directly with just the DuckDB CLI. So I can do any query on that. I can describe the table. All right. So this is actually a tool. I use often the CLI tool to debug or inspect things that has been wrong in pipelines just over S3. You see how quick it is. I can directly inspect any Parquet file, any CSV quickly. That's beautiful. So what's happening behind the scene there? Well, there's multiple things. The first thing we talked about the from first statement. I'm not going to go back, but there is extension being loaded behind the scene. So DuckDB is written in C++, and it has built in all the necessary dependency. So it's not like when you pip install DuckDB in Python, you're going to need to install different things to read for S3 or authenticate to AWS. Everything is in package and it's included into a single tool. So you can see here, there is multiple supported extension. And you see there is the Postgres scanner. You can read from Postgres, as I was explaining before. And the HTTPFS is the one used here to be able to read from S3. And this is a public bucket. And so that's a bit the mechanism of extension, is that the beauty of it is that it is downloaded for you behind the scene. So it's installed and loaded for you. We're going to come back quickly on the operation if you need to install it, load manually an extension. But that's the beauty of it. Here in this line, I didn't specify the file was on S3. I didn't specify the file was Parquet. DuckDB loaded all the extensions. So you see the Parquet extension is loaded for me. All right. So that's a really pretty neat thing to just highlight how easy it is to get started. So from there, basically, you can create, again, a table. So within DuckDB. So now I'm going to load this Parquet file internally. So now I have it in my DuckDB database file. So I have this Netflix data set, and I can also, start querying. So this is like the most popular TV show during COVID in the US. So yeah, that's interesting because it's a lot of basically kids show. CoComelon, if you have kids, it's kids music. Cobra Kai was really successful, and same on the movie. Anyway, so that's all about working with extension, working with remote file. That's basically the two things. I'm looking at, we covered also how to load the database. And by the way, if I load the CLI first, and I do after, so I don't have any table right now, right? And I do just an attach command. This attach command is magic. You can attach multiple database file. Then I can see basically, again, all my table, which is there. So the Ducks one and the Netflix I just created before. All right, so we talked about extension. What else is to be talked about? So I have a couple of slides also around that. Maybe I'll jump back to it, but I'll cover that first. So as I explained, we have you can see which kind of extension is installed using the from DuckDB extension. And by the way, again, all those commands you can run it in the Colab, in the notebook from DataCamp in Python. This is pure SQL. The interface is the same. If you install manually an extension, you just do install and load. So this is the extension. And if you want to install a community extension, so it's not extension supported directly by DuckDB. So let me actually show you that right here. So there is a website here called Community Extension, and you can also push your own extension, but you have to know C++. So that's a bit more challenging. But we have a bunch of people contributing about different community extension, as you can see. So that's all the extension. And there is one extension, for example, Scrooge, that provide an interface to Yahoo Finance. Yahoo Finance is basically a website to get, crypto transaction or also basically stocks information. If I coming back to VS Code, so what I do is that I do install Scrooge. That's the name of the extension from community. I load the extension. And then, for example, here, this query is going to do Yahoo Finance and going to give me some information between those two dates about the S&P 500 on stocks and the Bitcoin and the dollar. So here we go. So here, what's happening behind the scene is that it's called an API, an open API, and retrieve me the result into a table. And the extension make it really easy to query different stocks. So again, just an example like how DuckDB is easily extensible, right, by this extension mechanism, as we say. And this is like extension coming from a community, but there is a lot also in the built-in extension from DuckDB. One thing I want to talk also, we talked about S3 in a private bucket, but Mehdi in reality, my data in object storage are in a private bucket. And of course, so DuckDB has a secrets manager, and so you can just store your different secrets safely, either to AWS key and AWS secrets, or also to SSO. So here I'm logging actually. So this is a private bucket. So he's going to fill this one. You see, I have a 403. So access. Let me hide this part. I think you hide it. Put it there. So you have a 403 right there. And basically what's happening, if you create the secrets, it's going to use here my SSO connection. So I already log in using AWS SSO. So I have credential in my config file locally. Now I have a secret containing that in DuckDB, and I can query this again. And it's not working. Of course, it's not working because it's a demo. So probably I haven't done go to. Let me try again. Or probably it's just because I haven't put my SSO refresh before, or I did it a couple of hours before. And so what I'm going to do is just logging it in. All right. While I'm doing this, what I'm going to show you another thing, which is super fun, kind of a SQL kung fu. And then I'm going to stop there for the CLI because there is a lot of things to do. Is that here, for example, I'm reading from an API, from GitHub API, and then I'm doing some compute here where I want to get the top contributor, and I'm displaying a bar chart. So with just SQL, I'm doing an API call, and I'm parsing the result, and I'm visualizing this into a bar chart because DuckDB support also bar chart within the DuckDB CLI. So let's wait a couple of seconds. Bear with me, and there you go. So this is the top contributor, actually, as you can see from the DuckDB repo. You can change to any repository, and it's using the GitHub API and then parsing the JSON. So it's a read JSON for that and getting the result. So again, super, super powerful. To parse JSON log, JSON from an API. You can do directly call from an API. That's all their use case. I'm going back to I'm gonna go back to the slide where we are standing now. So DuckDB storage and extension, we talked about that. So by default, DuckDB won't process your data. It will be created if not exist, or you attach it. It's a one file that contains all tables. It's efficient compression and support updates. So for installing extension, I have shown it to you. We also saw how to load it from a community extension and loading finance data. It's important to understand that. So when I do a from S3 yada yada, there is extension that's being installed, automatically. But if I'm doing, for example, an operation where I have, which was this one. So this one, which is calling a Yahoo Finance function, DuckDB won't load explicitly the extension because it's a community extension. So, use it with responsibility because it's not supported officially by DuckDB. So there is an auto load function for the others. So whenever you do a from data to JSON, you have the JSON, which is extension, which is load. So that's why most of the time, actually, you won't install and load extension. And there is the community extension website, which is referred at. All right. Yeah, let's go into the data camp notebook and talked about Python. So I've just installed I have to initialize the session because, of course, I haven't done it just before. so bear with me. So I'm just installing the latest DuckDB 1.111 version because there isn't one already pre-installed over there, but it's just to get the latest. So this is done, and so now basically, how do I initiate the connection? Is just import DuckDB and DuckDB connect. So one interesting thing when you work with Python, I mentioned that, is that it's the interoperability with the existing data transformation library like Pandas or Polars. So for example, here, I'm doing a query against our S3 dataset from Netflix, and you see it's the same query. It's, again, SQL. I'm just using the connection, and I'm going to convert it as a Panda data frame. So this is run as a Panda data frame, and now I can inspect it. So this is the Panda data frame with the data, and now what I can do is that I can query directly this Panda data frame. So as you can see, I don't specify any table here. I specify the Python object, which is the data frame, right? So if you have existing pipeline using Pandas or Polars, it's really useful to get started with DuckDB. You install it, and you can start to do a couple of transformation or do pure SQL on top of a Panda data frame. So if I run this, you see this is the top movie. So we did the TV show before and with the CLI during the COVID, and you can see that it's also a lot of kids movie. The reason for that is simple. Kids like to watch over and over and over the same thing. So for one kid, you're gonna get multiple watch time, which is completely different for us, normal human adults, which watch 1 or 2 times, maybe 10 favorite movie, but not like 100 times. All right, so that's for Python. Everything I've done before with the SQL query, right? You can do the same thing here with this interface. Let me jump back on the side to see what we got here. So let's talk a bit about the ecosystem. So DuckDB and MotherDuck support a lot of interface in the data stack. And so this is where MotherDuck is going to come into play. I have actually a couple of slides quickly to understand what is MotherDuck. But basically, it's a serverless DuckDB platform, and you can store your DuckDB file format, the one we play, directly on MotherDuck. So you can store directly your tables. You can create a share, so easily share it with other people. So that's really great for open data set. So we have a bunch of shared database. That's what there is in the book, in the notebook here right now. So yeah, let's play a bit and poke around for a couple of minutes around MotherDuck. So here I'm using directly the connection, and as you can see here, it's just basically getting the last downloads from PyPI from DuckDB. So it's come from a shared database here, and so I'm gonna run this query. And of course, this doesn't work because I think this share is not directly that. Let me come back. Let me come back here. So this is just an example of other SQL friendly function. So let's show you how you can do function chaining. This one show you also how you can do excludes. So here I'm selecting all the table from ambient air quality data. So this is the sample database which you can have access. Everybody that start a MotherDuck account get access to those data set. There is also a data set around Hacker News, Stack Overflow, which is in there. So feel free to explore. Here's another one, which is dynamic selection. Pretty cool. So here I'm selecting only the colon, which is like pop based on a colon expression. So a lot of things regarding pure SQL. And here you see, for example, that's a group IO. I could talk for hours about pure SQL. For this thing, it's just that for this query that the database is not shared yet. So I'll just fix it in a couple of seconds and actually dig it in. DuckDB stats. Here we go. So the next thing I want to talk before jumping out, because what we already talked is how to use MotherDuck. So the important thing maybe I can mention is that whenever I run those query, right, and this one, that I'm not using anymore DuckDB in the process. I'm leveraging the cloud. All right. And one thing I want to show you again using the CLI is that coming from because we use the native integration of DataCamp, but what's happening behind the scene? So if I do an HMD colon, now I'm going to connect to MotherDuck Cloud. And I have a MotherDuck token in my environment variable. And now basically I can see all the database from MotherDuck. All right. And if I start to do some query over there, basically the query is going to be computed on the cloud. All right. There is also a mechanism where we do hybrid dual execution, and we leverage your local compute. So if some stuff can be computed on your laptop, we'll push it back to your laptop. And if some stuff cannot be computed on the laptop, then we leverage the cloud. So it's really the best of both worlds. And you see that there is really a smooth, I would say, workflow from working local to basically connecting to the cloud. I just did dash MD, and now I'm start to can query on the cloud, share a database, and so on. And so that's kind of what's happening here for you in the UI. It's just doing an attach, and that's pretty much it. So we have a couple of minutes left. We talked about the ecosystem. We talked about using MotherDuck, how to leverage the cloud, how coming from local DuckDB to working on the cloud. Now I want to, there is one last one that I want to show. I'm not going to be able to go into details, but I do want to show that this one. So DuckDB can run in the browser. What does that mean? Because the notebook DataCamp is in the browser. But I think what's happening here is that it's actually compute on the server side. Here it uses WASM, so which is stand for WebAssembly. And basically what's happening here is that if I disconnect my internet, I won't do it because otherwise I will lose the connection with you. But you can do the experience after this webinar because you will lose it. And you connect to shell.duckdb.org, you're going to have a DuckDB session here. And if you do call db gen sef, so I'm going to generate some data here. So you see, I've just generated data in the browser. So in compute, so this is computing locally in my browser. I haven't installed anything. It's thanks to WebAssembly. And now I can run a simple query, for example, on this data set, and you see everything is computed locally. And so the beauty of that is that we do leverage this in the MotherDuck UI, where basically if stuff can be computed on your browser, it will do it for you. And so that means you're not connecting to the cloud, you're reducing cloud cost, and the experience as a user is much snappier, okay? So that's another big use case, which is growing around DuckDB, is DuckDB WASM. And so I invite you also to check out the other resource and link for other demo. All right, it's time to wrap up. We have, I want to talk now about the use case. We've seen how the CLI is great to work. We can do SQL, we can store the data, we can also export I haven't gone into the function, but of course you can export to Parquet or CSV directly, use the DuckDB file format. What are the main use case? So the main use case first is really data wrangling and ad hoc analytics. So basically what you're going to use is you use any client, would it be, a Jupyter notebook, data camp, a CLI, and you're going to read from CSV, Parquet, JSON, or DuckDB file format. You're going to ingest the data and do some compute and write it back either to an object storage or to a DuckDB file format or to MotherDuck. So that's pretty classic. The second is really about ETL pipeline. So here you're really using, as a scheduled job. Often, typically, it's run in process in Python. That's how people are using it. You do pure transformation. Again, you're using AWS S3 as your blob storage or MotherDuck, and it works also great with DuckDB, with dbt, and DuckDB and MotherDuck. So you can also use it with those frameworks. So this is typically for pure data processing, ETL pipeline. That's another big other use case. And the third use case is the one that kind of I show with the data apps and the WASM, because now that you have basically the database that can run in the browser here, and it run in the server side, it can help cache any analytic tool, dashboarding tool. So if you need to display a large set of data, so typically a dashboard, and then you need to do a couple of filters, every filters and compute is going to happen on the client side. All right, I'm gonna show you. We might get a bit just out of time, but I want to show you this demo. So this is a demo. It's also in the slide, by the way, so don't worry. Which is using MotherDuck and WASM. So what's happening here is that we're going to display some data to a dashboard. I'm going to take the Seattle water. So when I'm going to select this, you see I'm applying a filter. So behind the scene, I have a data set that's contain all the weather at Seattle, and you see how much sun, how much fog there is. All right. So now if I move the filter, typically in a dashboard, you're going to see, this hell loop, because it's loading the data from the server, right? There is a latency. You change a filter. There is a request for new data on the server, and it's coming back. Because the data is already loaded here in my browser, every compute is happening locally. So if I move the cursor, you see the data filter is instant. There is no loading time because every query is happening locally. And you see, like, for example, here I'm going to take 10 million row on flight, same thing. I'm taking a filter, and you see all my graphs are adapting directly because every compute is happening on the browser. So that's really basically one of the key features of WASM is empowering dashboard for caching. All right, wrapping up everything. So where can I use DuckDB? So ETLs, data wrangling, exploration. It's also a good SQL engine over data lake. We did a lot of query over S3, right? So you can think about that. Local development, we use the CLI for data wrangling, data exploration. It's great for unit testing. How you can use DuckDB, the CLI, Python, or any language. And as soon as you need to scale or have the multiplayer game, you need to share your data set easily. Come to see MotherDuck and check it out. So there is all the links of the resource, which is there. And yeah, so that's about it. It's easy. Like if you count like everything we've been doing, like reading data from S3, parsing the data from JSON, query an API, if you remember with the GitHub contributor directly in SQL, a lot of friendly SQL function, exploring a file format. Everything was super easy and super simple. That was a packed agenda. And that's it for me. Just stop quacking and.
All right, that was really fantastic. I got to say, I love a lot of this, like just being able to pull in data from wherever it is, whether it's CSV or Parquet or it's like somewhere in an S3 bucket, is like one line of code. You got your data. You're not messing about with all the setup stuff. So very fantastic, exciting stuff. I think it's making analytics a little bit easier. All right. So for anyone in the audience, please do ask questions for Mehdi. We've got plenty of time for questions. Before we get to that, I just want to say tomorrow we have a webinar on breaking into data analysis careers. So if you're interested in your first job in data, please do come back tomorrow. Then on Thursday, we've got a leader focus session. So it's the Learning Leaders Guide to AI Literacy. So if you want your colleagues to be better at working with data, then please do come along to that. And I should also mention on the podcast on Data Framed, we have Mehdi's colleague. So Ryan Boyd is one of the founders of MotherDuck. He's going to be on the show on Monday. So watch out for that. All right, with that, let's go to some audience questions. So first of all, Christiane says, what are the advantages of using DuckDB over a typical relational database system? So yeah, why might you want, you covered this a little bit, but do you just want to summarize why you might want to use DuckDB versus whatever else?
So typically, standard, I mean, there is two kind of relational database, right? There is the analytical database and the transactional. So you shouldn't use transactional database like Postgres to do your analytical workload. You can start with, but at some point, you're going to kill your transactional database because it's not meant for that. For analytical database, as I said, like there is a lot of like today client server side setup like Snowflake, BigQuery, right? But you always need a server to run this database, where here basically everything can be run locally on a single node. So you can leverage more your local power. So it's really a new kind of database that's run in process rather than, and you can still put it on the cloud, but it's you have this flexibility and this workflow of leveraging this expensive MacBook that we all have, right, Richie?
Absolutely, yeah. Everyone needs an expensive MacBook, right? If they want to do data. All right, cool. So there's actually a similar sort of question, slightly more specific. This one comes from Harry Satri.
Yeah.
Saying, does it support querying ClickHouse databases? So ClickHouse is another analytical database. It sounds like a DuckDB competitor, but I don't know it so well. Do you want to?
So there is can you share the screen quickly? There is I just want to highlight. Yeah, so in the DuckDB community extension, there is actually an extension to help to query a remote ClickHouse instance to HTTPS. So it's still pretty limited, but you could try that. But there is other way around also easily to query directly your data at your source. Because and again, ClickHouse is also an analytical database, which is probably feeding their data somewhere else. But we've seen starting people also to query data from ClickHouse.
Okay, that's cool. Seems like it's all supported then. Excellent. All right. So next question comes from Diego. So Diego's saying, if you want to break into data analysis, how do you go about learning DuckDB, and what previous knowledge do you need to have?
Yeah, can you put it back? Yeah. Which step would you recommend learning DuckDB? Yeah. So the thing is, DuckDB is great to learn SQL. And so we have a lot of university switching their SQL courses with DuckDB because that's super easy to set up. You just do you just install the CLI or just do a pim install in Python, and it's quick. So that's the best tool to learn. That's the point. So it's not really which step you would be to break into data analysis, but the point is actually if you break into data and need to learn SQL, like DuckDB is really the right tool for you to get it started. So in terms of like previous knowledge, I would say that if you are not comfortable with a terminal, that you can learn the basic over there. a bit of Python, but to be honest, you don't need that much. And if you go to, Data Camp or MotherDuck UI, we have also an UI, you can, start to write straight SQL only. So yeah, I think, uh, focusing on your SQL skills first, that's super important. And having DuckDB in the back to support you for that is great.
Yeah, so on DataCamp, most of our courses are based on PostgreSQL, just because that's the most commonly used. But if you're taking any of our projects, I think some of the projects will make use of DuckDB SQL, and
Yeah,
also we have a load of tutorials. If you go to the blog section of the site, then yeah, plenty of tutorials on DuckDB.
and I want to add that like DuckDB creator were heavily inspired and still are by the Postgres syntax, right? So a lot of like function are building. So it's actually really close. Like you can most of the time copy paste it, all the SQL function coming from Postgres.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not sure there's much that's not going to work in in DuckDB, like if it's Postgres syntax. So that's cool. All right. Next question is from SB. Actually, there are a few questions in the chat just around what are the limits, like how big a data set can you deal with it. I know MotherDuck's
Yeah,
very keen on working with small data, but small data is not as small as
yeah,
it used to
yeah.
be.
That's a good question. So I haven't get into time to that because I had a data set of 4 GB and I crunch it in sub-second. Okay, locally. So if you think about it, 4 GB of data, and I can't, with like it's a 33 millions row, right? And I can query it with sub-second, so less than 1 second query. So there is a lot of margin, right? And the point is that if you get into 10 to 100 GB, you're gonna see, it's still gonna be pretty okay for most of the workload. But then if you go above 100 GB, and then the question is, do you have workloads like data daily that you compute, which is over 100 GB? Do you have a table, or a folder containing a data set daily that is, and I'm saying daily because there is multiple way to compute and chunk history, right? That's right. But the point is like a lot of, and that's the whole premise of the small data and big data is that most of the people will have daily workload which are far above 100 GB. There is a lot of excellent blogs on our MotherDuck blogs around that, around statistic. And so the point is, before getting scary, I see I was that was a beauty. I tried the 10 GB of file, even it was able to load it with no hiccups. Yeah. So the point is, you're not going to see limits in your workflow when you start it. Like I'm pretty sure it's really like at scale in a company, and there you have a different way of doing it. And MotherDuck is also there to help you scale. That's our promises.
Okay, so if you're dealing with terabytes of data, then that's that's yeah separate big data problems. But if you're dealing with like up to several gigabytes of data, then DuckDB's got
Yeah,
you covered.
there is
Yeah,
no, yeah, there is
yeah.
completely fine.
All right, super. Actually, one last question before we finish. So it sounds like DuckDB is going to be suitable for like data analysts, data scientists, maybe like some web developers as well. Um, if you're in a company, I guess most companies have some database there already. Like, how are you going to get started using it if there's already a database there?
So you mean like they already
It,
have a data stack with like,
yeah, like,
I don't
is
know,
this something where
BigQuery,
you
for
can just
example?
use for like individual projects, or is it something where it's going to have
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
rolled
So
out for
so
everyone?
that's the thing we saw is that you can use it like a lot of people are using the CLI to debug or daily query on object storage, but they have their pipeline in Spark or whatsoever. And then some people transition some ETL pipeline like from Pandas to DuckDB. So this is part, it's just a Python library that they change. What else that we see? So there's like multiple way to get like started on different things. I don't believe like the data stack is really big. There's gonna be some stuff that's gonna be merged, but as of today, like DuckDB will definitely fit within one of your use case or workflow, or you use it for learning, for example, or you have a platform like DataCamp and you need the SQL interface, right? So you use DuckDB. I didn't mention that, but DataCamp is also using DuckDB on the server side to provide SQL interface. So yeah, there is so much way to get it started. It's not just a data warehouse. And it's like, oh, I'm using already BigQuery, so I have no usage of DuckDB or MotherDuck. We've seen like plenty of people just starting to pick it up on specific small projects.
All right, super. Okay, so we are at time now. Thank you once again, Mehdi. That was very, very cool stuff. Really interesting. Thank you to Reese for moderating. Thank you to everyone.
Yeah, I just want to.
I
just want to add that like so I have my LinkedIn, so you can find me. Mehdi was on LinkedIn, and so feel free if you have any question I haven't got the time to answer there. Please, you can ping me. This is my work, so you're not going to bother me.
Absolutely, yes. Go and check out Betty's YouTube channel. That'd be brilliant. Okay, all right. Thank you, everyone, for coming along. I hope to see you again tomorrow or Thursday. We're taking a break from webinars next week. Both Reese and I are at an offsite, and then we'll be